Hello, I'm Trudy Harpham, the co-chair of the scientific panel of the IUSSP Family Planning, Fertility and Urban Development Fellowship Project. This presentation on the policy aspects of the project has been prepared by myself and Tim Thomas, who is our consultant to the project on policy issues. First of all, we're going to go over some definitions that we would like to use in our fellowship project. These are working definitions. You'll often come across different definitions for these concepts, but what's important is that within the project, we use clear definitions in a consistent way. We'll be considering policy, the policy context, policy relevance, and policy engagement. First of all, policy itself. It's important to realise that policy is essentially politics. Indeed, in many languages, for example Portuguese, there's no difference between the two words. There's only one word for policy equals politics. By policy, we mean the documented decisions, plans, strategy to achieve specific goals within a defined population. Note that it might not be implemented, so we are interested in both concrete policies and non-concrete policies, which might be commitments or statements of intent. one of the first things we ask our fellows to do is to document their policy context. By this we mean the situation in the geographical focus of your research. It might be several countries, one country, several cities within a country, a single city, several slums, one slum. But we want to know what intersections are there between policies related to family planning, fertility, population growth, and urban development. This requires looking at documents from both sides of the arcs that can link family planning, fertility, and urban development. You might not be so familiar with perhaps the urban development world. The family planning and fertility world might be more accessible to you. So it requires real investigative powers. We will then ask you to describe the policy relevance of your work, how your research intersects with and is thus relevant to any policy. It can be an existing policy, a proposed policy, or one that's merely under discussion. It might be that you're doing research that's not related to any current policy, in which case it's important to state that gap that you're hoping to fill. Of course, the reason that we're so concerned about the policy context and your policy relevance is that we hope this project will promote evidence-based policy. A definition of evidence-based government policy can be that governments make well-informed decisions about policies, programs, and projects by putting the best available evidence from research at the heart of policy development and implementation. That's a definition from Davies in 2004. But let's be realistic about this. Most policies are not based on evidence. They're based on politics. But we hope to change that scenario and increase the amount of evidence-based policy. Policy engagement will be important to all the fellows in this project. By policy engagement, we mean your involvement, your interaction with individuals who are involved with relevant policies or who are in a position to do so in the future. Because we are hoping to have an impact on urban development, we will ask you to seek actors from the urban development sector to engage with. We will provide mentors to help you form these active links. Depending on your research topic, you might have policy engagement at different levels. At the community, at the district, typically in this case the city or municipal level, at the national, state level, or at the global, international level. At the global level, there are several important global policy frameworks which you can engage with. There's the Sustainable Development Goals, Family Planning 2020, the Global Financing Facility, the UN Climate Change and its associated panel, and Habitat 3 and its new urban agenda. We're going to briefly touch upon all of these. The Sustainable Development Goals. The key one for us here is number 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities. This is the Sustainable Development Goal that we hope you can engage with. It's hard to get some audiences to see how family planning can contribute to sustainable development goals, because family planning's so often just seen as a health issue. For example, Bongartz and O'Neill in 2018, in their article in Science, said there's a widespread agreement among governments and international organisations that family planning programmes are a valuable investment. But these programs are often given low priority because they're considered a health investment rather than an investment with wide-ranging socioeconomic and environmental benefits. It will be easy for our fellows to engage with Family Planning 2020. Its goal is 120 million new users of modern contraceptives by 2020. And among the 4 initiatives, 2 are particularly relevant to our project: promoting data use and performance management, and facilitating dissemination of knowledge and evidence. So FP 2020, very easy and straightforward for our project to engage with. The Global Financing Facility, or GFF, is perhaps something that not many of our fellows have heard about, but it can significantly increase resources for family planning, so it's important. It supports governments to form investment cases that prioritise historically invested areas such as sexual and reproductive health and rights, maternal and newborn survival, adolescent health, and nutrition in the early years. So it significantly increases domestic resources linked to World Bank, other external financing, and private sector financing. Climate change. How do the fellows in this project engage with climate change? Again, turning to that same important article in Science that was published in mid-2018, Bongartz and O'Neill explained that much of the climate community, notably the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, is largely silent about the potential for population policy to reduce risks from global warming. Though the latest IPCC report includes an assessment of technical aspects of ways in which population and climate change influence each other, the assessment doesn't extend to population policy as part of a wide range of potential adaptation and mitigation responses. So there's a challenge here to link family planning, fertility, and population policy issues Another important global policy for this project on family planning, fertility and urban development is Habitat 3 and its new urban agenda. The new urban agenda assists governments to address challenges through national and local development policy frameworks, integrates equity into the development agenda, fosters national urban planning, and it helps decide how relevant sustainable development goals, remember number 11, will be supported through sustainable urbanisation. One of the important messages of this presentation is that things about policy and the policy process are not straightforward, they're not simple. So if only it were this simple, this diagram presents a linear linkage between identifying the problem, doing the research, change the policies, create better programs, and evaluate those programs, and producing a kind of virtuous cycle. But life isn't like that. It's not so simple. It's not so simple because so many different things are needed to make good policies. You need strong and early links between researchers and policymakers. You need a clear problem identification. You need good, credible evidence. You need a conducive environment to make and implement the policies. You need strategic communications. And you need the resources, financial, technical, human, and above all, you need the political will and stability. Remember, politics is policy, policy is politics. It's also not so simple because a whole load of people and institutions are involved in creating policy. This slide mentions several of them, from governments to communities to the non-government sector, business, private sector, media, opinion influencers. It is complex. This project hopes to have an impact on urban development. Therefore, we have to take some urban specifics into account. Here are some of them. Firstly, urban slums, and slums might be formal or informal settlements. They tend to be heterogeneous, which has implications for how we measure things. There will be differentials within the city as a whole between the slums and non-slums, but also within the slums there will be differentials in various measurements. Secondly, the power relations within an urban context have to be considered. There might be a centralised policy making and implementation. For example, the National Ministry of Health still might have much power over the The final definition that we would like you to bear in mind is the difference between dissemination and communications. For the purposes of this project, we define dissemination as publishing research findings, sharing with the scientific community, and we differentiate that from communications, which is adapting research language for lay audiences through the use of, for example, social and traditional media, brochures, elevator pitches, etc. What are our conclusions for the fellows of this project? We'd like you to use the definitions that we've presented, use them in a consistent way, in a specific way. We require you to engage with different levels of actors at the community level, the city level, the national level, the international level. We ask you to recognise the urban specificities of your research questions and your research audiences. And we need you to be prepared for complexity.